Peymon who?
Matahede.
Peymon Latahede. Who is he?
Never paid taxes in 30 years. Fought the U.S. tax court and won.
See, I believe our rights come from God, not from government.
Hello to my truth and freedom-seeking friends. I'm Peymon Matahede, president of Freedom Law School. At freedomlawschool.org, you know, I have not filed and paid federal income taxes for over 30 years and have a special guest here for you. This special guest of mine was a former gun-carrying IRS Special Agent with the Criminal Investigation Division of the IRS, who exposed the massive IRS fraud of the American people way back in the 20th century and has been exposing them. The IRS and DOJ had tried to shut him down, put him in prison. Didn't work. This man is a true living hero that comes in just once every 10 years or so. Someone like that come on the scene and makes a huge difference. And his story is absolutely amazing, eye-opening, and interesting. So his name is Joseph Banister. If you've not heard of him before, that's okay. If you have heard of him, we're going to do this several-part series on Joe Banister's story. How went from an IRS special agent to whistleblower, prosecuted, exposing scam of the American people and helping you educate yourself to live a free life. So, Joe, thank you for being with me at Freedom Law School, my friend.
Thank you, Peymon. I'm not as old as I look with the lighting here, so. But anyway, I'm grateful to be with you.
Yeah. Well, you know, we're both the same. I think we're about 8 months apart, Joe. I'm a few months older than you, you know, so we're both, I'm 63, you're 62 still. So you look good, my friend, you know. So, Joe, you know, people that don't know about you, let's start with your background, you know, your family background. Could you tell us a little bit how was it that, you know, you were raised up and led to being get into this accounting field to begin with in the IRS?
Sure. Well, born and raised in San Jose, California, middle-class family, Catholic upbringing, Catholic elementary school and high school. Went to San Jose State University. Family, my dad worked for the city of San Jose in their public works department. My uncle, my dad's brother, deputy sheriff with Santa Clara County, which is where San Jose is located, for like 30 years. Had cousins in law enforcement. And anyway, so there was a big government service vein, I guess you could say, it would run through the Banister family. And I also went to a Jesuit high school, so I guess the conspiracy theories can fly. But the theme, the motto at the high school was "Be a man for others." And so, you know, I didn't really realize how mottos like that or the government service running in the family, how that would all pan out later in my life. But they were certainly good guides, good guidelines to follow. So anyway, you know, basically I got a degree in accounting from San Jose State University, became a certified public accountant in the early 90s. And then it took me that long to realize that, wow, this is accounting is kind of a boring career. So I decided to spice it up a little by applying to both the FBI and the IRS Criminal Investigation Division, because both those agencies and many other federal agencies like to hire accountants, attorneys, those kinds of things. So that was kind of how it all started as far as spicing up my life and deciding to go down the road of government service.
So I think you applied to the FBI, I understand, first, before to the IRS. What happened there, Joe?
Well, so there was a family friend, actually a family friend of my wife's, who had been an IRS special agent for his entire career. But he also, like worked in the 70s and the 80s when there was a lot of drug investigations and combined investigations between the IRS and the FBI. He did undercover work. So he knew people in the FBI. His name's Bob. Actually, I addressed my resignation letters to Bob, but anyway, that's getting ahead of myself. So so he was giving me, advice. He was a good mentor in terms of pursuing a career in federal law enforcement. And he suggested that I apply to both the FBI and the IRS because the way hiring works in the federal service, you never know kind of how long it'll take. So that's why I applied to both agencies. And I have to say, at the time, I was certainly, I didn't like the IRS better than anybody else. And I was already a CPA dealing with the IRS for clients, could see that they were, they weren't really that desirable of an agency. But anyway, that's who the mentor worked for. And so I went ahead and applied. And then there was a hiring freeze with the FBI, even though I had passed every single requirement, the physical, the psychological, all the testing, for your own acumen, your intelligence. I passed everything, was literally waiting for a letter to report to Quantico, Virginia, to the FBI Training Academy. And there was a hiring freeze back when Newt Gingrich was the Speaker of the House. And so I'm waiting, hiring freeze. And meanwhile, the IRS had authority to hire, even though the FBI didn't have authority to hire. So the IRS application started going hot and heavy. And so then I had a decision to make. The IRS wanted to hire me. I wanted to work for the FBI. What should I do? Well, the mentor said, you better take whatever they give you. You can always move into where you want to be later. So that's kind of the thinking behind. And then, of course, being a CPA, I certainly had tax experience. And, so it was a pretty good fit. It's just that, I didn't have that many friends as it was, but going to work for the IRS, I knew I wouldn't have any. But anyway, that's how it turned out that I started to work for the IRS. And I only applied to the Criminal Investigation Division because I didn't want to be an IRS auditor or an IRS bill collector. I wanted to spice up my life. And so I wanted to use, my financial accounting tax skills to actually help my country, to serve my country, protect the treasury. So that's kind of my mindset. And of course, the day that I started with the IRS, or actually a few days after, I had to be sworn in. You have to actually swear an oath to support and defend the Constitution. It's a requirement of employment. And so I did that. And of course, I'm very, very proud to do that and very mindful of what that oath meant.
And Joe, your siblings were also, all of them, into law enforcement, weren't they?
That's correct. Back in the early 90s, so my next brother down, John, he's about 13 months younger than me. He served in the California Highway Patrol for an entire career, up through the rank of lieutenant. And he was actually assigned to the South Central CHP office where they filmed the series Chips. And then that's where they had all the Rodney King riots. So he literally hit the ground after training and was there maybe, I don't remember exactly, but a few weeks. And then they had the Rodney King riots. And then he's riding shotgun on fire trucks to put out fires in downtown Los Angeles set by all the rioters. Then Jim, the next brother down, he's was a Daly City firefighter. That's Daly City, California, south of San Francisco. And he's risen, he still works for the Daly City Fire Department. He's risen to the rank of battalion chief. And then our youngest brother, Jeff, spent a career at the San Jose, California Police Department. And he just retired a few months ago.
Wow,
so my dad passed away just a few months before I was hired by the IRS. But as I say, he was in the public works for the city of San Jose. My uncle, his brother, is still living, retired from the Santa Clara County Sheriff's Office. So, I mean, yeah, law enforcement and government service definitely ran in my blood. And so it's kind of a rude awakening when I made those discoveries that I guess we'll be talking about in the near future.
Well, what led to your getting interested and eventually discovering that the people of the 50 United States do not have to file and pay income tax? How did that journey start for you, working as an IRS Special Agent?
Well, I would say that, just as being a regular American and exposed to the kind of media that people your age and my age were exposed to, CBS, ABC, NBC, it was pretty controlled. And so the view was that anyone that spoke about, the income tax isn't required or the Federal Reserve or anything like that, people of today that are dialed into the internet can't really understand like how pervasive that brainwashing or controlled media was. So when I went into the IRS, I already was conditioned with that. And then, of course, the IRS taught that people that spoke about topics like you've been speaking about, and I have, at least since leaving the IRS, that we were, crazy, we were anti-government zealots, criminals, illegal tax protesters. And so that was kind of the mentality that was built into me. But it only penetrated so far because my upbringing, also, I was informed about the Constitution, about how critical, our Constitution is to our freedom, that where our rights don't come from the Constitution or from government, they come from God. And so thankfully, I was well ensconced in that kind of a mentality. So all of the, propaganda about, people like Peymon only penetrated so far. But I spent, it was from November of 1993 until February of 1999 was the time period that I spent working at the IRS. And the first 3 years, all of 1994, 95, and 1996 were really great. I mean, they were exciting. I became a firearms instructor, defensive tactics instructor. I really focused on not being pigeonholed as the CPA who just gets a bunch of boxes to investigate and, just be right back into my boring accounting life. So I really made an effort to work on money laundering cases and things that weren't, what you'd picture a typical CPA to do. And so those first 3 years of my 5.5 years at the IRS, I really enjoyed immensely. It was incredibly rewarding. And I wasn't going after, people for just, pennies or, they declared too many meal receipts or, some ridiculous thing like that. I was going after like drug smugglers that were smuggling crack cocaine across the country, back when they had the Olympics in Atlanta, Georgia. Big investigations with that I ran or that I did in conjunction with the U.S. Customs Service, the FBI, and local police departments. So anyway, the first 3 years I expected to last a full 20 years because that's typically a law enforcement career with the IRS. And then I was listening to a talk radio show at the very end of 1996, so about 3 years into my career there at the IRS. And this woman, her name was D.V. Kidd, she was talking about the federal income tax and the Federal Reserve and a bunch of other, the New World Order and topics like that, which, as I say, back in the 90s, that was like taboo, like, oh, wow. Nowadays, I mean, people's eyes are really opened, but it wasn't like that in the 90s, as you well know, Peymon. But anyway, so I was listening to her, and again, I had my core was knowing about the Constitution, knowing about the attacks on the Constitution, knowing how that, both Republicans and Democrats, there's plenty in each party that really have no care about our freedom, about protecting the Constitution, adhering to their oath. They're dangerous as hell to our freedom. And so I always had that mindset. So at least I listened when she was talking about the income tax, the Federal Reserve. And I basically decided after hearing her on the talk show that I should look into this more. And I didn't, ask for any kind of permission to do an official investigation. I didn't park my brain at the door when I got a job with the IRS. So I used my own time to investigate the claims that she made on the radio that day. And like I said, that was like December of 1996. So then all of 1997 and all of 1998, I dug in. I basically used every skill that I had to that point, which would be certified public accountant, degree in accounting, IRS training in tax, money laundering, criminal investigation, and utilized all those skills to investigate the federal income tax. I mean, when you want to come right down to it. So that's what I did throughout 1997 and 1998. And of course, I could kind of take a breath because during that time, you were one of the first people that I came into contact with. And so you can describe how that went. I think your side of it would probably be more interesting than mine.
Well, if I remember right, you ordered a copy of D.V. Kidd's book, and there you saw that Bill Conklin had a $50,000 reward over the income tax question. One was asking for the law that requires Americans to file income taxes, and the other question was how could you file the 1040 tax form without giving IRS the possibility of coming after you, put you in prison for signing that form. You basically giving up your right to be silent as required by the provided by the Fifth Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. So you called Bill Conklin, who was listed in her book, about his reward, and after talking to Bill for a little bit, he told you, well, you should call my friend Peymon. And then he called me. Said, Peymon, this guy's going to call you. He's an IRS Special Agent, and he's asking about the income tax question. And but I don't think he's a spy. I don't think he's coming here to spy on us. I think he's genuine and for real. I think you ought to talk to him. I said, okay, it sounds good to me. And a little bit later, sure enough, you called me, and you just started asking me questions, and you told me that I'm not looking at you as a target of a criminal investigation. I just want to understand what you guys are talking about, what you guys are saying about why income tax is voluntary for Americans. And so that's where we started, like you said, educating you. I introduced you to my other friends like Sean and Steve at Free Enterprise Society, Dave Bullington. He's a few other key people in the movement that I trusted. It's not to betray your confidence in me, and that, I don't want you to get you in trouble with the IRS either, because I found out you were a real thing. And I even have our level 1 course called The Practical Road to Freedom from Oppressive Taxation and Control. A course in living free for those who are committed to living a free life. I gave you a copy of that course, but I had special labeled it for you, Midnight Basketball, to be able to listen to it in your government car without getting in trouble by somebody who may come across those audio tapes and say, hey, what is this freedom audio tapes you listen to while you're driving for the IRS going to appointments? This is not exactly the kind of stuff you should be listening to. So I did that for you, and because I always believe in education for people, and you certainly were a good student. You always were very interested in learning more, and you picked up the ball running, and then tell them about how you decided to write a book. Tell them about that, Joe.
Well, what's interesting about what you shared with me is that even though I had had training as a CPA to research and training with the IRS to research, they didn't train, and I mean, we could argue whether it's purposeful or not, but we could set that aside for now. But, you were able to show me, it wasn't like, oh, here's Peymon's opinion on X, and here's Peymon's opinion on Y, And on number 1 and number 4, you just showed me Supreme Court case law and statutes, and you had me talk to lawyers, and so what can I say? But you showed me evidence, and of course, to an investigator, whether I was doing a formal investigation with the IRS or informal investigating the income tax, as I did, it's all about evidence. It's all about show me the proof. And so I just want to, recognize you, or let your audience know that you played an instrumental role in, because I couldn't go to the IRS and say, hey, how come you didn't teach me about Supreme Court case law and what it says, and so you were a good resource. And like I say, it wasn't just, listen to my opinion, I'm Peymon. It was, look at these Supreme Court cases that you may not have been shown before. So I just want to point that out. But back to my story, in that all of 1997 and 1998, about a 2-year period, as you said, I'm speaking with you, with other attorneys, other people that you arranged to have me meet with, and just doing an investigation, like finding the facts, and then also comparing those facts that I was encountering with what the IRS was actually doing and what the IRS was, claiming as its authority. And so at the end of that 2-year period, when we're starting to come into 1999, after 1997 and 1998 doing the investigation, which, by the way, was just evenings and weekends on my own time, and really making my wife angry because I was already working 50 hours a week at the IRS criminal investigator job. And then I'm going to the law library, and I'm, doing all this extra stuff, and it wasn't very fun at home to try to do this. But freedom isn't free, and I took an oath to support and defend the Constitution, and I really meant it. And so I was put to the test. Like, how much do I really believe in adhering to this oath? So that's what I did. But when it got to be the end of 1998 and early 1999, I recognized, in talking with you and others, I better get something together here so that when it's time to confront my supervisors or however I'm going to do it, I have something that I can point to, right? I can actually basically assemble the evidence. And so it came into basically a report that was 90-something pages. And it presented some, not all, but some of the evidence that I had encountered that I wasn't aware of, before I worked for the IRS. And I think I actually mentioned you in my book, right?
Mm-hmm,
you're mentioned in the book.
Mm-hmm.
We call it a book. It was a report as it originally stood out, because as an IRS special agent, as really any law enforcement person, when you do an investigation, you have to culminate the investigation with a report. And the report not only uses evidence as exhibits, but it actually explains why the exhibits support the conclusion. Excuse me. So that's what this report basically did. It had exhibits, evidence that I encountered, and then I explained what I believe to the best of my ability that the evidence showed. And the basic conclusion, just to kind of get it down to a thumbnail, is that the evidence showed me, and now this, think about this. I'm a certified public accountant. I'm an IRS special agent, a criminal investigator, carrying a gun and a badge around for the IRS. And the evidence indicated to me that the IRS was breaking the law, and that it didn't actually have the lawful authority to force people to file tax returns and pay income tax. So, that was a bit of there was some real conflict going on in my body and my soul over that. And again, at the time, I called it preliminary because, hey, I could have made a mistake. People make mistakes. But I was as diligent with my investigation of the income tax as I was in doing my IRS criminal investigations. I applied the same amount of integrity and poking. And so to come away with at least preliminarily thinking, wow, there's a problem here. I think the IRS is lying to the public. But that was basically the presentation, the 90-page report, plus an explanatory, what I call transmittal letter, a letter that accompanied the report, so that my bosses at the IRS would literally have something to look at, something to share, something to poke at themselves. And unfortunately, once they poked at it, it took them a few days. But after their poking, what they basically did is called me into the special agents in charge's office there in San Jose, California. And he said, Joe, what I'm about to do, I've been instructed to do. And I'm going to be placing you on administrative leave. And you're to go home. I'm taking your badge and gun. We'll leave you with your pager. And you're going to go home for a week and think about what you want to do next. And they also said, we won't be answering any of your questions or your concerns. And this is after being promoted. For those in federal government service, they know that there's a grade scale. So I went from, I forget if I started at a grade 5 or a 7, but I ended up at a grade 13. And that's the highest grade prior to management. And I was just the cat's meow, meow. Everybody wanted me on their search warrants. Everybody wanted me to help with their cases. And then I asked a few questions about, evidence about the income tax. And all of a sudden it's like, see you later, Joe. But that was basically their reaction. So I went home for a week. And again, if I thought that home life was difficult when I was studying, home life became very difficult when I'm saying, honey, remember this job that I wanted so bad and wanted to serve my country? I might have to leave in a week. But over that week, I basically, talked to different people. Some people were saying I should stay. Some people were saying I should go. And I decided that part of the evidence that I encountered was that the IRS, the DOJ, the media in particular, they can try to ruin your reputation or make you as somebody you really weren't. A contemporary example would be like Alex Jones, where they just totally railroaded him into these civil judgments. But back then I thought, look, I've got a good reputation. In fact, I've got an excellent reputation. I have documentation to prove it. I think it'd be better if I leave so that I can keep that reputation intact. And, judgment calls are judgment calls, right, Peymon? I mean, maybe I could have made their IRS life even more miserable by staying. But that's a decision that I had to make. I feel like I had good reason to do so. And the other good thing was that I could speak freely. Because if I remained at the IRS, there's all kinds of, Hatch Act and all these restrictions on what you can say. And I wanted to be able to speak freely. And boy, on February 25th, when I resigned, I started speaking really freely. And of course, you helped me get the word out. So I'll take a breath, but that's basically how that transpired.
Yeah, and you wrote, I remember, a very respectful letter to the commissioner of the Internal Revenue Service, the head honcho, and asked them, look, I'm supposed to report fraud, abuse of power, anything I see that's wrongdoing, I'm supposed to report it. You told us in your instructions to us, so I'm doing what you said, and I'm reporting all this fraud and abuse I see by the IRS on a massive scale on American people. So here it is. If I'm wrong, show me where I'm wrong, because you took your oath to uphold the Constitution very seriously. You let the commissioner of the IRS know that, Charles Rosati. And I remember you wrote in there that, hey, I cannot live with myself because I can have two masters. I can have either, do whatever the IRS tells me or live up to my oath to uphold and defend the U.S. Constitution from all enemies, foreign and domestic. So here it is. the ball's in your lap to clarify this issue. And I really loved your very humble, respectful tone to the head of the IRS about this problem that you came across. And all they did when they respond that your manager, Bob Garini, was supposed to just hand over to you because, your book, when I understand, went to the headquarters of the IRS's Criminal Investigation Division in Washington, D.C. At the minimum went that high. Whether Rosati saw it or not, we don't know that at this point. But, at least got to headquarters in D.C., they told him to tell you, look, hey, you can take a time off paid and think about this. And when you wrote back and said, look, I cannot have two masters, so I'm going to leave the IRS. I thought that was a very honorable thing, you did. Although, as you know, yes, I did want you to stay in there to give them hell, but that's okay. You came out, spoke at our 1999 Freedom Rally in Newport Beach, California. We had over 300 people there. Freedom Law School printed and distributed your books out there. We got about 10,000 books. And we got, I think, that first night, we had about over 1,000 of your books. We got them out there. People bought them at $20 a piece. Some people bought cases of your books to get out. So it was very exciting. It was big news because we published it. We let people know all over the Southern California media. You're coming out ABC, CBS, NBC. We contacted all of them. They may want to send a reporter to have an IRS official is exposing IRS fraud. Of course, nobody showed up, right? To cover it because they don't want people to know about all this. And so that was very exciting times. I remember when the room was very full. People were waiting for you. They did not know what you even looked like. In our brochure of the event, we did not put Joe's picture on the brochure because at the time, he was still working for the IRS. We just put some IRS officials coming out. And so people did not even know who Joe Banister looks like until they saw him in person on the podium at that time. So that was very interesting. But I think the audience, Joe, would like to know what happened after that, where you got out there to debate the government and confront the government about the IRS, the Department of Justice, and how that led to them, not answering you, and then try to put you in prison to shut you up because you were such a thorn on the side that felt compelled to try to stop you, and they failed. So, but the folks, we try to keep these interviews in segments so it's not too long, and so people will share them easily with other people. So we're going to take a break from this recording because we're going to have Joe back to do follow-up sessions about his story, which is really very, very unique and interesting. So with that, Joe, what I'd like to do with you, if we could, is take some questions from our audience. Joe, can Joe answer questions here? Question and answer also? Okay. If you can do that, let's do that. If not, we can say goodbye to Joe. That's okay. Let's put the number on our screen to get people's questions answered. So, folks, I'm not sure if Joe can take questions this time, but we'll see. If not, I'll do it myself. But next time, if not, we'll arrange it ahead of time to make sure that Joe can take your questions also. So later this year, every other week or so, we'll bring Joe Banister back, everybody, to complete telling you guys his incredible, unique story about exposing IRS fraud on the American people. And so I invite you just, join us in upcoming weeks and tell other people about it. And this video, of course, I invite you to share it with other people about, Joe Banister's unique story. We'll bring you back, my friend, later this year to tell everybody about your amazing story that I'm sure is going to be empowering many people to check things out and start living a free life, my friend. Thank you.
My pleasure, Peymon. Thanks for all you do and for all your crew.
Thank you, my friend.
Take care.
All right, take care, my friend.